The diner was loud that Friday night. It always was when the base let out for the weekend. Young soldiers from Fort Carson piled in, still in their uniforms, loud and cocky in the way only 20-somethings who've never seen real combat can be. They filled the booths, ordered burgers and fries, and talked too loud about training exercises and weekend plans. In the corner booth, away from the noise, sat an old man. He was thin, maybe 75, with white hair and a weathered face that looked like it had seen too much sun and not enough sleep. He wore jeans, work boots, and a faded denim jacket with the sleeves rolled up. On his left shoulder, barely visible under the jacket, was a patch. Most people wouldn't recognize it, but to those who knew, it meant everything. He was eating alone, a simple meal, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, black coffee. He kept to himself, the way he always did. But the young soldiers noticed him, not because he stood out, but because one of them, a private first class named Dawson, thought it would be funny to engage him. Dawson was 22, fresh out of basic. He'd done a couple of training rotations but hadn't deployed yet. He was the kind of kid who talked a big game, made jokes at other people's expense, and thought confidence was the same as competence. He nudged his buddy, a specialist named Torres. Check out Grandpa over there. Bet he's got some war stories. Torres glanced over. Leave him alone, man. Dawson grinned. Come on, let's hear what the old-timer has to say. He stood up, beer in hand, and walked over to the old man's booth. His friends watched, some laughing, others looking uncomfortable. Dawson leaned against the booth. Hey there, sir. You look like a military man. You serve? The old man looked up slowly. His eyes were pale blue, calm. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at the kid, then he nodded. Yeah, I served. Dawson grinned wider. No kidding. What branch? Navy. Dawson's grin faltered slightly. He'd expected Army, or maybe Marines. Navy seemed less impressive to him. Oh yeah? What'd you do? Sit on a ship? The old man's expression didn't change. Something like that. Dawson's friends were laughing now. One of them called out, Ask him if he ever got seasick. Dawson chuckled. So what? You were like a cook or something? The old man took a sip of his coffee. No, not a cook. Dawson leaned in. Come on, don't be shy. What'd you do? The old man set his coffee down, looked at him. His voice was quiet, steady. I was a SEAL. The diner didn't go silent. The noise continued. But the soldiers at Dawson's table stopped talking. Torres's face went pale. A few of them exchanged glances. Dawson, oblivious or too drunk to care, laughed. A SEAL? You? He looked the old man up and down. No offense, Pops, but you don't look like a SEAL. The old man just stared at him. Dawson kept going. I mean, SEALs are like, badasses. You look like you'd have trouble climbing stairs. One of Dawson's friends, a corporal named Hayes, stood up. Dawson, shut up and sit down. Dawson waved him off. What? I'm just saying. If he was a SEAL, where's the proof? Where's the trident? The old man reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a worn leather wallet, opened it. Inside was a card, old, laminated. It had his photo from decades ago, young, hard. And beneath it, the words, U.S. Navy SEAL Team 2. He slid it across the table. Dawson picked it up, looked at it. His smile faded. He looked at the photo, then at the old man, then back at the photo. It was him, younger, stronger, but unmistakably him. Dawson's hand shook slightly. He set the card down. I didn't know. The old man took the card back, put it in his wallet. It's fine. You didn't ask. Dawson swallowed. What did you do? The old man's voice was flat. Things I don't talk about. Dawson nodded slowly, suddenly sober. He walked back to his table. Nobody was laughing anymore. Hayes glared at him. You're an idiot. Dawson sat down, face red. I didn't know. Torres shook his head. You should have left him alone. They finished their meal in silence. The old man went back to his meatloaf. 20 minutes later, the door to the diner opened. A man in his 40s walked in. He wasn't in uniform, but he carried himself like military. Buzz cut, broad shoulders, eyes that scanned the room like he was assessing threats. He wore jeans and a navy hoodie. He walked to the counter, ordered coffee, and waited. While he waited, his eyes swept the diner. They landed on the old man in the corner. He froze, stared. Then his expression shifted. Recognition, disbelief. He walked over slowly, stopped at the booth. Sir? The old man looked up. His face showed surprise. Then a faint smile. Commander Briggs. Briggs' face broke into a grin. Holy hell. Master Chief Dalton, I thought you were dead. Dalton shook his head. Not yet. Briggs laughed, slid into the booth across from him. What the hell are you doing here? Dalton shrugged. Eating. You? Briggs gestured vaguely. My kid plays hockey nearby, came to watch the game. Thought I'd grab coffee before heading back to the base. He paused. Sir, it's been what, 15 years? Dalton nodded. About that. Briggs's expression turned serious. You just disappeared. After the op in Fallujah, we heard you retired. Went off the grid. Dalton took a sip of coffee. Needed to. Briggs nodded. I get it, but damn, it's good to see you. You look good. Dalton smirked. Liar. Briggs laughed. Then his eyes caught something. The patch on Dalton's jacket. He leaned closer. You still wearing that? Dalton glanced down. Old habits. The patch was small, faded. Most people wouldn't recognize it, but Briggs did. It was the insignia of SEAL Team 2, Vietnam era. One of the original teams, one of the most decorated, and one of the most classified. Briggs's voice dropped. Sir, you know people would kill to talk to you, to hear your stories. Dalton shook his head. I'm not interested in stories. Briggs leaned back. Respect. But you should know, you're a legend. Guys in my command still talk about you. The op in Ramadi, the hostage rescue in Kandahar, the thing in Somalia that never made the news. Dalton's face darkened. Those weren't legends. They were missions. People died. Briggs nodded. I know, sir. But people also lived because of you. The soldiers at Dawson's table were watching now. Hayes recognized Briggs. Knew who he was. A SEAL commander. Active duty. Decorated. Hayes leaned over to Dawson. That's Commander Briggs. He's the CEO of SEAL Team 5. Dawson's stomach dropped. He looked at the old man, then at Briggs, then back at the old man. Oh God. Briggs noticed the soldiers staring. He looked over, recognized the uniforms. Army. Young. He turned back to Dalton. You know those kids? Dalton glanced over. One of them came over earlier. Wanted to know if I was military. Briggs raised an eyebrow. What'd you tell him? The truth. Briggs smirked. Bet that went over well. Dalton shrugged. He didn't believe me. Briggs laughed. Of course he didn't. You look like a librarian. Dalton smiled faintly. That's the point. Briggs stood. I'm gonna get my coffee and get out of your hair. But sir, if you ever want to come by the base, talk to the guys, the door's open. Dalton nodded. I'll think about it. Before Briggs left, he walked over to the soldier's table, stood at the end. The young man looked up, suddenly nervous. Briggs' voice was calm but carried weight. You boys know who that is? He nodded toward Dalton. They shook their heads. Hayes spoke up. He said he was a SEAL. Briggs nodded. He was. Master Chief Robert Dalton, SEAL Team 2. 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 in the Gulf, 4 in Afghanistan. He's got more combat time than everyone at this table combined. The soldier stared. Briggs continued. He's also got a Navy Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and a Purple Heart. And if you're smart, you'll go over there, apologize for whatever dumb shit you said, and thank him for his service. Then he walked out. The table sat in stunned silence. Dawson's face was white. Hayes stood up. Come on. They walked over to Dalton's booth, stood there awkwardly. Dalton looked up. Yes? Hayes spoke first. Sir, we're sorry. We didn't know. Dalton nodded. It's fine. Dawson stepped forward. Sir, I was out of line. I said some stupid things. Dalton looked at him. You did. But you're young. You'll learn. Torres spoke up. Sir, can we buy you a drink? Dalton shook his head. I'm good, but thank you. Hayes hesitated. Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why don't you wear your medals? Why don't you tell people? Dalton was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because the men who deserve recognition didn't make it home. I did. That's enough. The soldiers stood there, not knowing what to say. Finally, Dalton spoke again. You boys want advice? They nodded. Respect the people you don't understand, because you never know what they've carried. Now go finish your dinner. They nodded, thanked him again, and walked back to their table. This time, there was no laughter, no jokes, just quiet respect. Dalton finished his meal, paid his bill, and walked out into the night. As he left, every soldier in that diner watched him go. And when the door closed behind him, Hayes turned to Dawson. You just got a lesson you'll never forget. Dawson nodded, face still pale. Yeah, I did. Because some men don't need to prove who they are. They don't need medals on their chest or stories to tell. They just carry it, quietly, humbly. And if you're lucky enough to meet one, you shut up, listen, and show respect. Because men like Master Chief Robert Dalton are the reason people like Dawson get to sit in diners, drink beer, and talk shit without knowing what real war looks like. And that, more than any medal, is worth remembering. Dalton walked to his truck, an old Chevy that had seen better years. The cold night air bit at his face, but he didn't mind. He liked the cold. It kept him sharp. He unlocked the door, climbed in, and sat for a moment before starting the engine. His hands rested on the wheel. He could still feel the weight of the looks those young soldiers had given him. Not pity, not hero worship, just recognition, maybe understanding. That was enough. He drove home in silence, no radio, just the hum of the engine and the sound of tires on asphalt. His house was 20 minutes outside town. Small, one story, nothing fancy, a place to sleep, eat, and exist without bothering anyone. He parked in the gravel driveway, cut the engine, and sat in the darkness for a moment longer. Some nights were harder than others. Tonight wasn't bad, just heavy. Inside, the house was dark and quiet. He didn't turn on many lights, just a lamp in the living room. He poured himself a whiskey, neat, sat in his chair by the window and stared out at nothing. The glass felt familiar in his hand. He'd been doing this routine for years. Drink, think, remember, try not to remember too much. His phone buzzed, a text from Commander Briggs. Meant what I said. Doors always open. The guys would love to hear from you. Dalton stared at the message for a long time. Then he set the phone down without replying. He appreciated the gesture. But talking to young SEALs about the old days felt wrong, like showing off scars you'd rather keep covered. The next morning, Dalton woke at 0530. Old habit. He made coffee, black and strong, and sat on his porch as the sun came up. The mountains in the distance were still dark, but the sky was turning gold. It was quiet out here, peaceful. That's why he'd chosen this place. No neighbors, no noise, just him and the land. Around 0800, a car pulled up his driveway, unfamiliar, black sedan, government plates. Dalton's instincts kicked in immediately. He set his coffee down, stood, and watched as the driver's door opened. Out stepped a man in his 50s. Suit, tie, military posture. He walked toward the porch with purpose but not aggression. Master Chief Dalton? The man called out. Dalton didn't move. Who's asking? The man stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. My name is David Keller. I'm with Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm here on behalf of Admiral Patterson. May I have a moment of your time? Dalton's expression didn't change. Admiral Patterson retired 3 years ago. Keller smiled slightly. He did, but he still keeps tabs on certain people. You are one of them. Dalton crossed his arms. What does he want? Keller reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Held it up. He asked me to give you this, and to tell you that it's not an order, just a request. Dalton walked down the steps slowly, took the envelope, and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Admiral James Patterson had been his commanding officer in the early 2000s. A good man, a hard man, someone Dalton had respected. The letter was short. Bob, I know you don't like attention. I know you want to be left alone. But I'm asking you to consider something. There is a ceremony next month at the Navy SEAL Museum in Fort Pierce. We're honoring the men of SEAL Team 2 who served in Vietnam. Your name is on the wall. Your brothers are being remembered. I think you should be there. Not for you, for them. J.P. Dalton folded the letter carefully, looked at Keller. Tell him I'll think about it. Keller nodded. That's all he asks. He turned to leave, then stopped. Master Chief, if I may, my son is in BUD, divided by S right now, class 357. He wants to be a SEAL more than anything. If you ever decided to speak to a class, to share even a fraction of what you know, it would mean the world to kids like him. Dalton's jaw tightened. Your son doesn't need me. He needs good instructors and his own determination. Keller smiled faintly. Respectfully, sir, he needs both. He walked back to his car and drove away. Dalton stood in his driveway, letter in hand, staring at the dust trail the stand left behind. He went inside, poured another cup of coffee, and sat at his kitchen table. The letter sat in front of him. He read it 3 more times. Each time, the weight in his chest grew heavier. SEAL Team 2, Vietnam. Names flooded his mind. Faces, voices. Men who'd fought beside him. Men who'd saved his life. Men who'd died in his arms. The wall at the museum wasn't just stone and metal. It was memory. It was blood. It was brotherhood. That night, Dalton made a decision. He picked up his phone and called Commander Briggs. Briggs answered on the second ring. Master Chief, didn't think I'd hear from you. You still want me to come by the base? There was a pause. Then Briggs' voice came back, careful. Absolutely. When? Tomorrow, 1,400 hours. But I'm not giving a speech. I'll answer questions. That's it. That's more than enough, sir. I'll set it up. The next afternoon, Dalton drove onto the naval base. He wore the same jeans and denim jacket. The gate guard checked his ID, saw the SEAL team patch, and waved him through without a word. Briggs met him at the entrance to the training building. They shook hands. Glad you came, sir. Dalton nodded. Let's get this over with. Inside, a classroom was filled with 20 SEALs, active duty, young, fit, focused. They stood when Dalton entered. Briggs gestured for them to sit. Gentlemen, this is Master Chief Robert Dalton, SEAL Team 2, Vietnam, Gulf, Afghanistan. He's agreed to speak with you. Show respect. Dalton stood at the front of the room, felt their eyes on him. He cleared his throat. I'm not here to tell war stories. I'm here because Commander Briggs asked. So if you have questions, ask. I'll answer what I can. A hand went up immediately. A young SEAL, maybe 25. Sir, what was Vietnam like? Dalton's face was unreadable. Hot, wet, confusing. We didn't have the technology you have now. We had maps, compasses, and our instincts. We went into places where we weren't supposed to be, did things we weren't supposed to do, and came back without anyone knowing we were there. Or we didn't come back. Another hand, how did you deal with fear? Dalton looked at the kid. You don't deal with it. You carry it. Every mission, every firefight. Fear keeps you alive if you respect it. The guys who weren't afraid were the ones who got killed. A third question. Do you have regrets? Dalton was silent for a long moment. Yes. Every man I couldn't save. Every call I made that cost someone their life. You don't do this job without regrets. But you do it because someone has to. For an hour, they asked questions. And Dalton answered, honest, raw, no sugarcoating. When it was over, the SEALs stood and applauded. Not because he'd inspired them, but because he told them the truth. As Dalton left, Briggs walked him to his truck. Thank you, sir. That meant more than you know. Dalton climbed into his truck. I'll go to the ceremony. For them, not for me. Briggs smiled. That's exactly why you should go. A month later, Dalton stood at the Navy SEAL Museum in Fort Pierce, Florida. The ceremony was small, a few dozen people, families of fallen SEALs, active duty personnel, and a wall with 42 names, men from SEAL Team 2 who died in Vietnam. Dalton stood in front of that wall, hand pressed against the cold stone, and whispered names no one else would remember. But he would, always. And as the sun set over the ocean, Master Chief Robert Dalton realized something. He spent decades trying to forget, trying to bury the past. But maybe the past wasn't meant to be buried. Maybe it was meant to be honored, remembered, carried forward, not with pride, but with respect, for the men who gave everything, and for the men who lived to tell their story, even if they didn't want to retry.